Hey, what's up, folks? So, sorry about that delay. All this stuff always takes a while to set up and make sure it's going right. And sometimes even then, stuff doesn't work out, but better late than never is what I always say. So yeah, for those of you that are new to the stream, if you're watching this on the archive or you're watching me live right now, my name is JC. I'm the creative director of Ask an Enemy Studios out of El Paso, Texas. And I made this game called the Dual Hand Disaster Tracker. And been working on it for, I guess, the past 6 years or so. The music you hear in the background is the music from the game. But what I did, since the game is a split-screen, single-player, twin-stick risk-em-up, what's that, you ask, right? It's pretty much exactly what it is. It's a game where you're doing two things at once. You're controlling left ship. You move left and right only. It's kind of like playing Galaga. And then the right side is like you're playing Pac-Man. So you're moving in basically 360 degrees. And yeah, so the acronym of the game is ADHD for a reason. And when you're trying to play the game and talk to people about it at the same time, it's a little difficult. So what I'm going to go ahead, or what I actually did, and so this is what I was having a problem with, is the gameplay that I captured. I basically went through Tier 1 and Tier 2, did the whole extraction, basically played the whole game, and caught some capture of it so that I could talk about it while it's being played and not be like super distracted. So the only thing is, for whatever reason, audio wasn't captured when I did that. So you're not going to get any audio in the feed. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and let it play in the background. I'll just keep the music going. And yeah, so the music's not going to line up with the game. But if I need to, while I'm showing the game, if you guys have any questions, obviously just ask. And I am more than happy to basically just play it. And I probably will end up playing it a little bit. Sorry, my throat's a little dry there. For you guys to get an idea of how the game plays or whatever. But you can watch the video and it's the same thing. So let's go ahead and just switch on over to this here real quick. And when you're one guy doing all these things, that's kind of where you got to improvise and do all these things to make sure you can keep your attention focused as much as possible. So what I'm going to do is set up the scene here real quick. Also, yeah, this game is it's available obviously now on Steam Early Access. You should be able to buy it on the store for a 10% discount due to the Mega Booth sales. So the Indie Mega Booth, for you guys who aren't familiar, is basically this outfit, I would say, from Seattle, Washington, that just they put shows together at like PAX, and they did do their own kind of like standalone thing not too long ago in Georgia, which I heard went pretty well. But what it does is it allows developers like myself, like just people who, like smaller developers, obviously you're going to get some of those games that are kind of like higher up on the totem pole, I guess, for lack of a better description. But you do get a lot of developers that normally wouldn't be able to make it out to like a PAX or something, right? So they have the ability to like request all these games from all over the country and the world, actually. So like they'll have games from like Brazil, Europe, UK, like all sorts of places, and they put all those games into what's called the Indie Mega Booth. They also have like the Indie Mini Booth, which the Mini Booth is more like what they ended up doing was they split like the Mini Booth with like other developers to, again, try and get as many people as possible into the show. And Mini Booth is kind of like split between the weekends. So like PAX is usually a 4-day event, so they'll do 2 days for the Mini Booth and 2 days for the other. And then they'll swap out games within that. And also like at GDC, what they started doing was it's a whole week event, right? So it's 3 days and it's a whole 5-day event. So they basically do like a 3-2 kind of thing. But it's super rad. So basically, I knew about the Mega Booth because, you know, when I was playing games before I even started to even think about making one, I would always hear about PAX, and you'd hear about like the Mega Booth and all the games that they were like showing off or whatever. and it was super rad. So basically, when I started making a game, my goal was always to like, holy shit, it'd be really cool to show your game at PAX. And yeah, that was actually one way to do it. Before I actually made it into Mega Booth, though, I actually just like kind of forced myself into the industry by just showing the game at PAX on your own. So the thing with Mega Booth, though, that makes it really cool is they will help you with like promotion, because they have more of this like kind of like a marketing arm of like Mega Booth, right? So like they have like a whole team that is doing that. It's kind of like when you're in a band and you have like a street team doing your like promotion so that you can worry about making the game. Mega Booth is kind of like that. Mega Booth is like you'll work on the game for however long, and then if you're selected for Mega Booth, so they have a curation process, obviously. You go and you apply, and you know you're not always going to be selected, as was the case with me. Like I applied multiple times over the years, and because of the games that were getting into Mega Booth, it just kind of made me step my game up, basically. So literally my game up. So I just kind of kept applying, and my first time at Mega Booth was GDC in 2017. So that was actually super rad. Because my first GDC in 2014 was where like that fire was lit. So to show the game at GDC was actually super rad. But anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and I'll set up this scene here so that you guys can. So I set this up. This is really cheeseballed, but I basically set up the live stream here to be to basically emulate like if I was showing the game at PAX East or at PAX, like it doesn't matter which one, but essentially let's go ahead and switch this so you guys can see. Let me actually disable this first and swap on over. There we go. So yeah, the game's going to be playing here in the center of the screen. Again, the music's going to be off because this is just a capture of the game, but gives you an idea of how the game's going to be played. So here we go. You've basically got two screens. You've got your left side, your right side. Left side does not take damage. All you're worried about is killing enemies and keeping those enemies out of the right side. So on the right side, you're recovering resources. That's what the right ship is doing. So when you're on a resource, if you're killing enemies at the same time, you're multiplying the points that you're getting. The whole purpose of the game is you want to get a high score, but the only way to keep your score is to leave the level with it. So obviously, in a lot of these like shoot 'em ups, you basically will keep your score every time that you die. And that was kind of like a big point of contention with a lot of the friends that I made over the years that make video games. They were like, my whole thing from the very beginning, and a lot of the very, very early builds actually have the game where basically the whole idea was that every time that you died, if you did not extract, your score was wiped from the leaderboard. And that was super cool. Like, that was always the idea. That was kind of what I always wanted to do from the beginning. And even from the very, very early times of when I made it, the game in Game Maker, which was super rad. Yeah, it was always about just pushing people out of, like, a comfort zone. So, like, you know, you play something like Resogun or Geometry Wars or whatever, and it would get to this point where you were kind of like playing it mindlessly anyway, and like no matter what you did, granted, okay, say like you had a really good run one time, right, and your score was, say, like, I don't know, I mean, I have no frame of reference again to what scores could be in Geometry Wars from a median or like an average or whatever, but I don't know, say like you played the game the first time and you were really bad at it and you got like 500 points or something, and then you just kept going over and over again, and then you had this like really high peak, right? So like you have say 1,000,000 points, and that was like really good, but you still didn't feel like super challenged. It was just kind of like, oh, that's the best I could do. Then the next time you come in and say you have a really good run and it's like 5,000,000, right? Then your position on the leaderboard traditionally with games like that is that your score is always static, so it's never ever going to change. And so the thing about that was that since your score never changes, it never felt like playing the game again like there was any real risk or anything like that involved. It just always felt like, I don't know, like, I guess dead, for lack of a better term, right? So basically what I thought would be a cool twist on that would be the idea of having a leaderboard always change. What I called it when I first started working on it was like live leaderboards, because my thought process behind that was that, yeah, the leaderboard was just constantly changing. Like no matter what you were doing, you would just always be fluctuating your spot on the leaderboard, and that was cool from the beginning. But then as I started letting, once I got into early access and I started seeing people and how dedicated they were to actually try and get a high score, it was kind of crazy because, I don't know, I felt like it was a little too punishing, just wiping your score all the time, because sometimes you would die from like careless mistakes, and that's fine, whatever. But yeah, it was just a little intense sometimes. So basically what I ended up doing was, there's only like 2 conditions where you will actually wipe your leaderboard position. One of those conditions is dying to the... oh no, so this is... yeah, never mind. That's something I'm thinking of adding in later. But the 2 conditions are basically if you die in Sliver Bullet, which is your health gets really, really low, and if you die in that mode, you wipe your leaderboard position. If you die in any mode, you lose the score that you had, but you don't wipe your position. So that was the thing that changed, and it makes a huge difference because at least now, like when you extract, which means you actually have all of the recommended, like all the requirements to extract. So for example, on this screen right now, the right side has all 12 parts. Parts are the orange squares that you see the ship going to. Here it's a little chaotic, so that's kind of why you see it doesn't start off this chaotic. It's only when you activate shields that this happens. But on the left-hand side, you get material. That's what on the right-hand side, that's what those little green things are. On the left-hand side, you sacrifice that material to the left side so that you can restore the link, which is the left side of the heart. So as you're killing enemies with your repeater, that's what spawns the material. So you're constantly just picking up material. The thing about material, though, its secondary function is that it is your score multiplier. So the more material you have, the higher your score is going to be. And I apologize, guys, if you are asking questions in the chat. For whatever reason, the chat isn't loading for me here. So give me a second. I'll try and restart it here. Just the chat, because it does seem like the stream itself is actually going. So let's see. Yeah, so it's causing me to log out and do all sorts of stupid stuff. But anyway, there we go. Okay, so the chat's now up. If you guys had any questions, feel free to drop them back in, because the chat just froze for whatever reason. So yeah, what I was saying about the material. Material is your score multiplier. So the more material you have, the higher your score is going to be. On the right-hand side, you're recovering resources, which are parts. And those parts are what you need to leave with your score. So notice the center of the screen says extract ready. What that means is once you get to that point in the game, now what you want to do is you can play it mellow. You can take your time with it. It's up to you. Or you could actually just start doing what I'm doing here, which is activate your shields on the right side and just start creating chaos all over the place on the left, so that you can start getting a ton of points really fast, and then you extract just like that. So once you extract, you get your score. I got 45 million. It'll show you your position on the leaderboard, and then you can kind of scroll through it if you want to see who the top scorer is. The top score right now on Tier 1, that's not 100% legible to me, but it is, I think it was 5.8 trillion. So yeah, what you do is when you extract with a score, now you can take that score with you to the next tier. So the next tier is basically essentially the exact same game, except now you start off with all your weapons on the left-hand side. So you're fully powered up on the left. You don't need to be getting upgrades, which I'll explain again when it comes back. But for now, just know that the second tier is a little more advanced. Like, you kind of don't necessarily want to go there from the very, very beginning. You can choose the tier from the beginning, 1, 2, or 3, doesn't matter, because I used to have a thing where like you had to go from one to the other. But I started to realize that some people just immediately liked going to 2 or 3. And so I just threw that in. It's not like one of those things where like you kind of have to unlock it. It's just there. You can play. The whole game is open to you from the beginning. So, and again, being one person, the game isn't. I hesitate to say this because some people might take it the wrong way. It's not that it's not long. It's just that it's an arcadey type game. You know, I had to make it. I made it myself, so I had to make it as bite-sized as possible. So I didn't spend another 6 years trying to finish it. So it's arcade in nature, where it's just you pick it up, you play it, and that's it. Like, that's what you do. There's no story. There's like some lore, but it's mostly meant as like a Pac-Man kind of thing, where like, you know, Ms. Pac-Man, blah 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 kind of stuff. And you know, there's a tutorial or a video in the game that'll explain that to you. But anyway, yeah, I try to keep it as simple as possible in the sense of bite-sized as possible, right? So obviously the devil's in the details, though. So it's all about just how you take advantage of what's being thrown at you so that you can basically counter everything as much as possible, but get the most benefit from it, if that makes sense. Yeah, so like I said, in Tier 2, it's essentially the same game, except now on the right-hand side, notice that circle around the right ship. That is your kite bonus. So basically when you have your kite bonus, the kite bonus is a kind of like a way for you to actually test your ability to track the right ship and stay alive and still do everything else on the right, on the left. Because the thing is, when that kite bonus gets activated, obviously what that means is a fireball is coming right at you. Like in Tier 2, there are heat-seeking fireballs. So those fireballs will come right at you as long as you stay in motion and you don't you don't stop or you don't take off too quickly. The fireball will stay in that circle, and if you're killing enemies on the left at the same time, then you are multiplying your points by a massive amount. In addition to that, when you have the kite bonus active, if you can kind of like circle some resources, like just kind of go over them as the circle. So let's see if I do this here. So notice the little arrows on the ship, around the ship, are basically telling you where the resources are at. So if I do that, if I instantly pick it up, then I'm just going to get a multiplied a raise of 50. So every time you go into a resource, your kite bonus, you can't really see it just because my camera, my couch here is in the way. But notice right to the left of the heart, you'll see under that whole screen, basically, that's your bonus bar. So anytime you have a bonus active, those bars are going to light up. And again, by all means, if you have questions, just do not hesitate to ask. Yeah, so those bars are going to light up whenever you have a bonus active. And when you have a bonus active, what that's going to do is it's basically going to let you know that what you're doing is actually something you should be doing, because now you've got a multiplier going in some way or another. And there's always something you can be doing that'll give you a bunch of points. So you always just want to pay attention to that as much as possible. Okay, just making sure the chat was going again. So yeah, again, here, this is back to Tier 1. So this video that's looping here is basically a Tier 1, Tier 2 thing. I didn't go into Tier 3 because Tier 3 is a whole other can of worms, and I can explain that later on. If anyone's interested, I could do a run of Tier 3. Yeah, Tier 3 was just, it's a whole other mode, and I'll explain that in a bit. But yeah, just to get back to basics. So here on the left-hand side, that blue light that shows up on the left side, that is what's called a Tetris, and that means that there's an upgrade coming to you. So this is how that happens. On the right side, when you get material, the left side will spawn an upgrade. When you grab that upgrade, it's going to upgrade your rate of fire and unlock your weapon system. So on the left side, for example, now you've got your boost. So now you can hold down the left bumper, move left and right a lot faster. Here's the thing I forgot to mention earlier, though, is moving and shooting on the left-hand side, you're invincible, so you're not worried about taking damage. But moving and shooting on the left-hand side is what causes the left side of the heart to go down. So that's called your link. Essentially, it's like fuel. So every time you shoot and move, that's going to go down. And in order to restore that, you're going to need to sacrifice, like I said earlier, the material, which are the green objects that you're picking up on the right side. So sacrificing material over to the left fills up that side of the heart. That'll keep you going. It'll let you know that you're not going to black out. Just like this, notice the left side's blocking out. Do not black out. If you black out, you're going to pay for it. And what I mean by that is not only does it cost you more resources to bring that side back, every 30 seconds, the firewall caves in on you, which is basically the Russian firewall around you that starts to rush in on you and try and take you out. So that in the game happens every 4 minutes. But if you block out on the left side, then you're going to have to deal with it every 30 seconds, let alone having to pick up all the resources that you need, which, if I'm not mistaken, is 4 parts and 3% of your material. So just, you know, try not to black out. That's the most important part. If you do, though, the game does let you know, hey, you need this many parts, and it lets you know how many material you need, and, you know, so on and so forth. So yeah, getting your upgrades. Notice your repeater. That's your first weapon. It's like a machine gun. It's your first weapon. It's fully powered up now. On the left-hand side, you also have a scatter shot, which is kind of like a area of effect, kind of like shotgun kind of thing. So you use that to basically clear out the enemies that are on the left-hand side, the ones that are just kind of like right above your ship, because those enemies, so that was kind of more of a design decision thing that I did in there. They don't give you any points. They don't do anything. They're more of a nuisance. They're, as a design thing, it was more of a way to get you to let go of that trigger instead of just kind of holding on to it and, again, being mindless like you would be playing like Geometry Wars or something. So your weapon system is essentially you hold the left trigger. That is your first weapon. That's your repeater. Then you will eventually get your scatter shot, which is a single tap, so you just kind of tap it once, and there's a slight bit of a cooldown. Again, it was kind of just like a, what do you call it? Give me a sec here. Huh. Okay, so, yeah, I don't know why chat isn't working on Steam, but someone asked... I got notified by Cal that I think someone asked, can I recover health? And that's actually a really good question. No, you cannot. The reason for that is it's meant to incentivize you to stay in the game instead of just giving up and starting over again, because I know people do that a lot in these types of games. That's why these types of games have that type of, like, start up real quick and then, you know, jump right back in, because people will like, oh, I didn't do this like speed run real well, or I didn't, you know, hit this thing on target or whatever. So basically, oh, okay. Well, that was a good question anyway, Kyle. So yeah, basically it's the idea of keeping you in the game instead of just kind of restarting. So the thing about your health as well, and again, this is why I say that's a damn good question, because the lower your health is, the higher the bonus is for staying in. So you basically, there's 3 levels of health. There's critical health, low health, actually it's low health, critical, and then sliver bullet, in that order. And it's basically 25%, 10%, and I want to say 4%. So when your health gets down to low, you're getting a... I think it's a 50, like there's so much math in this game that I completely forgot the actual amounts outside of the critical health, which is 250, and then sliver bullet is like 2,500, I think. So anyway, I mean, just do the math there, right? So like when your health is below that 25%, if I'm not mistaken, I think it is 25% just because of that. 25 time multiplier anyway. And that's a base multiplier, and it multiplies everything. So all of these bonuses get stacked on top of each other, and that's kind of how you find out. That's how you start to kind of like, I guess, manipulate the system and get all your points. And there's, so on the Discord, there's a section in the Discord, I think it's in the Gameplay Mechanics channel, where this dude Frosty actually figured out exactly the amount of hits it takes to get you down to Sliver Bullet. So it's really funny that people do this, because I started to see this a lot, especially at like, I think 6 was the first time I saw someone actually try to do it in a legitimate type way, where there were a lot of people that, it's another reason why I made your score wipe, your leaderboard position wipe on that position, because the lower your health is, a lot of people would basically get their health really low and then just kind of cheese that mechanic. And then when they would die, there was no like penalty for that, right? And actually, guys, give me a quick sec, because I actually know what I need to do here for the chat, which just reminded me here. I think, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go make sure that the chat is set to public. I think that's the only thing I forgot to do. Oh yeah, no, it's right. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure, because I want to make sure if you guys have questions, I'm here to answer them. That's kind of the whole point of this stream here. Let's see. Yeah. So anyway, the thing about the health, like I said, it was just people kind of trying to just cheese the system. There's no penalty for it. So what I decided to do was make that one of the penalties for trying to do that. So because the thing is, when you get down to Sliver Bullet, the bonus is massive. I've actually had like first-time players take advantage of the Sliver bonus just because, you know, for whatever reason, you know, like it's new to them. They're controlling two things at once. They kind of forget about one side or the other, and then they start to realize that they're about to die on the right side. So I mentioned, hey, stay alive. You know, your health is going to be a benefit at this point, but you have to pay attention. And so I've seen people play like their first run, first ever, like they've never played the game before. They get to that point, but they start to focus there at the last second, and they end up leaving with like 15 million points or something, right? Because again, the whole purpose of the game is you have to extract. That is the one thing that you absolutely need to know. And just to point this out, if you guys are watching this on Steam, the chat is acting up. So the stream is also going on youtube.com/AskAnEnemyStudios, twitch.tv/AskAnEnemyStudios, and on Twitter as well at AskAnEnemy, just so you know. So if you want to throw in a chat question in the chat, that might work as well. You can also go to AskAnEnemyStudios.com, and there's a main page there that will send you to the stream here. But yeah, so it's been crazy making this thing. It's been a lot of fun. And just watching it being played back here is kind of crazy. Yeah, so again, devil's in the details, because there's so many little things that when people come up and try to play it at like PAX or whatever, a lot of people will see it and they're kind of like, they really like the graphics or whatever, or the art kind of gets them, which surprises me, because when I started the game, it didn't look anything like this, and I had no idea it would ever even look anything like this. Which to me, I mean, I can see it, and I've seen it from the beginning, and I've seen it progress all the time. So for me, it's kind of, in a weird way, it's kind of looked the same for me throughout the whole year. I mean, throughout the whole time I've been working on it. But it's kind of like family members or something you haven't seen in a long time, right? Where you haven't seen them for like 5 years and they look totally different. But for them, they've seen themselves their whole life just get older or whatever. So, yeah, it's just a weird thing, I think, when you create something. That's just the way it is. Which is kind of one of the weird things about making an early access game that I kind of was against at first. Because I'm not a big fan of like, if a game is done, just release it like it's done or whatever. But I also get there are some people out there who really do want to basically, you know, kind of see a game through from beginning to end. So basically, when I did the Kickstarter, people were like, "Why don't you just release this on early access, man?" Like, because my whole thing was I'm just one dude, and I don't have like a QA team, anyone that can sit here for hours on end and just play the game to try and find these bugs. So all of these bugs that I found were essentially bugs from like watching people play it at like at a PAX or something, or a Minecon or something like that. So essentially, after the Kickstarter ended, that was kind of my choice. I was just like, based on the feedback I got from people who were like super stoked about the Kickstarter, but you know, they were part of it, but it just obviously never made it enough. It didn't fund, like it failed basically, which is what the post-it notes up top say. People were like, "Hey man, just put it on early access. Like, we want to pay for this. We want to play it already. We'll give you feedback in the meantime." That was kind of the consensus, I guess, from a lot of people that were on Kickstarter. As a matter of fact, at one of the events at GDC, it was super cool because one of the Kickstarter people that backed it saw me show the game at an event. I think it was Dutch Courage, I think, the week before GDC, and he came up to me. He's like, "Hey man, I you know, like, obviously not funded, but I helped. I was a backer." I've been trying to think of that word for this whole time. I was a backer of the Kickstarter, and you know, I gave him a hug. I thought that was fucking cool. But one of the things was, he said he's not playing it until it's out of early access. Like, he's just leaving it there, and that he bought the game. Another thing also. In early access, so that was his thing, is like, I'm not going to play it till it's out of early access. I hope that guy's not waiting too long because it's still in early access, and that was in 2018. But the thing, again, one person, I had to release the Switch version, so that was kind of my priority at the moment. But yeah, it's been rad just running into people like that, and because of these events, that's when I started to basically just see how people were either cheesing a system or breaking a system, or sometimes even just straight up saying like, "Hey man, it'd be cool if this could do that," or whatever. And you know, I could never really promise anything in particular because I didn't know what I was doing when I started the game. It's really hard to code a lot of this stuff. So I just did what I could. On Saturday, I'll be streaming again as well, and my buddy Blaze will be joining me then. He is I made him the moderator of the Discord because he's just always on Discord, and he's played this game to death and basically knows the ins and outs, or at least he thinks he does, of the game. And yeah, so he'll be on here with me. He can help share some stories of when he first saw the game and all that kind of stuff. It's been a blast, man, and it's just, you know, putting this whole thing together and just, like, it's kind of a weird thing to see, especially knowing how the game, what the game looked like when I first started it, when I first started showing it to some friends and stuff, and then just having the excitement of the idea of a dumbass like me being able to get a dev kit from PlayStation to make the game for the PS4 and stuff, you know? So a crazy part about that is, because people always ask, like, you know, what platform I'm coming to and all that kind of stuff. So when I started working on the game, it was supposed to be a Vita game. Like, it was meant to be, because I love my Vita. Like, I haven't played it in quite a while, but when I do, the game I pick up is just Spelunky, because you just pick it up and you can just jump in and start playing it, and there's not like this super complex story. You know, don't get me wrong, I love my Metal Gears and all that kind of stuff, but there's a time when you just kind of want to pick something up and play it and stuff. And I've never been one of those people that likes playing games on like mobile, because first and foremost, it's like your communication device, so it's really hard for you to play something on your phone and not worry about your battery running out. Although I know there are a ton of people, my girlfriend included, that will play games like what is it, the whatever the game is with Clash of Clans and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, sometimes, for the most part, you're by a charger or something when you're playing it. Yeah. But the thing with mobile is also well, even though now that Apple has the idea of, or the ability for you to, like, pair a controller to your phone, which is super awesome. It's great they finally did that, and that you can use either a DualShock 4 or the latest versions of the Xbox controller. It's super awesome, but I just, yeah, like, it's just not meant for that. So you can't, what is it? You can't require the player to have a controller, which means you have to think about the input of your game. So when a lot of people wonder what it's like to, like, port games over to different platforms or whatever, primarily the main thing is you have to worry about input, where for the most part, with, like, the major platforms, right, like PlayStation 4, Xbox, and the Switch, they all have the same generalized controller, right? So you have your buttons and your sticks and all that kind of stuff. So all that stuff is standard, but when you start to go over to something like a mobile phone, then you have a touch screen and you have to create virtual sticks, and you have to be the one to put the work into where the placement of those buttons are going to be on the screen and such, you know? So that kind of stuff is not easy. It's time consuming. So unless you have a team that is actually, like, able to do that for you, then it gets kind of hard to, it gets kind of hard to, like, think about kind of doing all that stuff. And, you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've gone through some of that stuff in my head as to how it would work in this game. But again, you have a game where a lot of it is, especially in any kind of shoot 'em up, I would say, is having your fingers on the screen, your big, like, fucking thumbs and stuff on the screen, covering up a good percentage of the screen, is not very, I guess, conducive for the game, right? There are very specific games, like, obviously things like Angry Birds, games that are, I don't know, more mellow in nature, I guess, which I'm surprised, like, the guys that make Enter the Gungeon actually made Exit the Gungeon for iOS. Granted, I'm sure the bonus or the amount of money they got from Apple for releasing that was probably worth it. Where, again, you know, I've constantly been applying for funding from different publishers and everything as well. It's never quite worked out, but, you know, you're kind of, it's a little like a double-edged sword. Hey, Sagasi, I just noticed your, so the chat's been a little wonky, just so you know. So the Steam chat's been acting weird. I do have it up, but for whatever reason, it's just kind of not refreshing. But the Restream chat should be working. So if you're on YouTube or Twitch or Periscope, I should be getting those messages. Sagasi says, I'm not late, you're too early. So she is on the East Coast, which, yeah, it's 7, 8, 9. It's 9 o'clock over there, dude. Which is Blaze's bedtime, by the way. But yeah, so basically, I forgot what I left off on there, but the whole idea is making a game's a lot of fun. It's just it's definitely challenging because when you start to think about inputs, during the process of the game, I did consider doing a Wii version of the game, and this was super early on, so it was always like I was still trying to get as many of the platform, I don't know how you would say this, like, I guess title agreements where you want to try and get in with one of the companies as soon as possible, right? So that you kind of have the hardware as soon as possible and be able to test your build to it. So again, kind of going back to this input thing is the idea of, like, Unity. So the game is built in Unity, this particular version of it. When I started the game as a game maker. But, oh, Yeah, so basically, Sagasi, I have it's video. It's a video of me playing the game from earlier, so that I could focus on kind of describing stuff, since it's really hard to play and explain at the same time. So Sagasi was saying it's disorienting hearing the chill music when things are going nuts. Yeah, so the music, as a matter of fact, check this out. So just because I have it handy and ready to go, yeah. So this is the music that plays when chaos is going on the screen, so you could obviously tell it's getting super chaotic. This is just a short clip, though, because it kicks in, and then it just kind of cuts off because it's just... It was a clip I sent to a podcast that I did that I was a guest on, and they asked for music, so I just kind of threw it in there. But there you go, right? This makes a lot more sense. I don't know why when I captured the video, there was no audio on it. And then when I went back to find out what the hell was going on, I realized that my PC had the audio card just kind of like flipping between like the capture device, the built-in audio. I don't know. It was a mess. That's kind of what this whole thing is. I'm at ease now. Nice. Yeah, Sagasi, if you wouldn't mind, if you happen to be in a position where you can, if you could test the Steam chat, just send me a message through Steam as well. My girlfriend tested one earlier and sent me a screenshot saying it didn't go through, so... you know, no rush. Just kind of want to know if the chat is working on Steam. But anyway, yeah, so I don't know why audio just didn't capture. It could have just been some kind of hiccup there. And I do have the game running in the background, so I can be ready to play in case I need to for whatever reason. But also for the sake of Steam, the game needs to be running for the stream to work. So it's just kind of hanging out here on my main screen while my laptop, my computer is doing all the streaming stuff. Cool. Thanks, dude. Yeah. So she says, yeah, 1 sec. So anyway, yeah. When I started the game, the Wii was one of the consoles, one of the platforms I was looking into. Oh, cool. Yeah. I got you. Sagasi on Steam says, okay, here's the test. Worked just fine, dude. Thanks. Good to know. The restream chat was acting up earlier, so I went ahead and reset that. But anyway, yeah, so the Wii, and I've heard, like, again, making this game has been really cool because I've been able to go to these events and meet so many different people. One in particular is my friend Legolomaniac. He originally used to go by Vortex. For those of you who are on the Discord, again, if you're watching this on archive or you're watching this live, Legolomaniac is a buddy of mine who works at Snow Castle. He worked on a game called Earthlock. Yeah, they released on Wii, they released on PS4 and everything, so he has some serious chops in programming and stuff. He's like their engineer. And he basically, like, I met him at GDC, at that GDC, as a matter of fact, that I spoke about earlier, that I made it to, which was at GDC in 2017. And, you know, just showing the game at the Mega Booth, obviously thanks to the Mega Booth. I met this dude. He just showed up at the booth, sat down with me and just played the game for a bit. He saw my Post-its because obviously it's one of the reasons why I put the Post-its up on the stream, or not on the stream, on the well, on the stream too, but on the monitor when I show the game at events, because it's a good way of just kind of explaining the backstory of the game. And Sagasi, if you're still there and you have any questions, dude, like, or you want to share like a story with some folks here, I actually I might be able to do this on Saturday if you have time on Saturday. Blaze will be here as well, but I wanted to set up the Discord chat so that the audio chat, so that I could have you guys on here and share like your stories of when you first saw the game and all that kind of stuff. But if you feel like sharing something in the chat, I'll bring it up and talk about it on the stream. But you could also join us on Saturday, and I'll try and figure that out. The thing is, with the software I'm using, it's a little weird with capturing the Discord audio into the software that I haven't quite figured out yet. So I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but from here to Saturday, I have plenty of time to try and figure it out. So I'll need to double check my work schedule, but I should be good for Saturday. Cool. Yeah, it'd be good to have you on, dude. So Sagasi, just for those of you who are here, Sagasi played the game, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time at PAX East, because she is a Bostonite. And so, okay, this is actually a really cool story. I hope you don't mind me sharing it, but I mean, there's a video of it, so what the hell, right? There's a video I made that's on the YouTube, youtube.com/AskAnEnemyStudios, where so when Sagasi played the game for the first time at East, she was one of those players that I was talking about earlier that kind of would doubt themselves, right? So they would kind of like, they're like, oh no, I can't do this, or whatever the case. But she was a fucking beast. Yeah, PAX 2019 specifically. So, yeah, she just kind of like, you know, she would play it for a couple minutes, at times even I think for an hour straight, because I had a couple stations, so it was easy to just kind of flip people in and out. And she was, she would play it, then she'd go, she'd come back, and then she'd keep coming back, which was pretty rad. And then it came to a point where, again, you could go and watch the video on YouTube. It's really, really rad. Her and this other dude, Roku, like they just kept going at it, and like she was fucking like zoned. And I don't remember the exact score, but I remember it being really fucking high. And it's kind of like that thing. The whole purpose, well, I guess kind of it became a subconscious thing, but the reason I made this game was, I did say this earlier, was the idea was to get people out of a comfort zone that for the most part they're kind of used to, right? Of just having, I don't want to say easy, because it's not like you have it easy. It's just the idea of you just become, for lack of a better word, like brain dead. She says, I kept coming back because it was so addicting. Awesome. It wasn't absurdly high, but from what I had achieved earlier, it was pretty high. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, is the idea of like, one of the main reasons why I made the game where you lose your score every time is so that you have this like incentive to just do better, where it's kind of like a mental thing that you see in people sometimes, where like they'll play the game and they tend to only focus on how much they lost as opposed to how good they did. And I want to try and emphasize that more, so that every time you do something, regardless of whether you lose the score, the losing is just a way to like not punish you necessarily, but to make you feel like what you're doing is worth doing, right? So Sagasi says, but I do very distinctly remember you guys freaking out when I extracted. Yeah, I think I remember, even on the video, I think, like, we both, like, I think Blaze was there as well, and we just started screaming, and, like, I think you freaked out as well because of that. But, yeah, because it's awesome, dude. Like, those are those type of moments that I just love seeing in people when I show this game at events, it's this idea of people doubt themselves. Once you explain what the tool set is and what they have and what they can do, granted, it's not like everyone's going to pick it up and just be like, oh, yeah, hell yeah, let's do this. But if you give yourself a chance, everyone's going to doubt themselves at first, for sure, like no doubt about it. But if you just kind of just keep pushing yourself and learning more and more and more, eventually it clicks with you. Either it does or it doesn't, obviously. But when it does, when it clicks, it clicks. And, you know, like, I dropped out of game design school because I don't even know if that's something they could teach you, but it's definitely not something they did, right? Like, it's not like they taught me, hey, this is something that will keep players engaged or keep players going or whatever. I don't know. I just made it the way it is, and it was just kind of like a subconscious thing of like, I'm going to push people here a little more. I'm going to try and do this, because it was the idea of like, I would play the game, and this might sound negative, but I would get bored of what was already there, but only because I was already super familiar with what was there. And so I got to this point, actually, where I was adding so much to the game that the shields are actually a really, really good example. the shields used to activate automatically. So it wasn't something that, for example, right now, you activate your shields, and activating shields creates chaos, which is, you know, this whole mess that you're seeing right now on screen on the left-hand side. So originally, that used to happen to everybody, just on their third material. And if you think about it, you get your third material pretty quickly, and you don't really have a great way of kind of countering that. So basically, you would start up your shields and your repeater was still as slow as it was, but you were getting all these enemies and they would all come down and they would come out on the right. And it was just, I could deal with it, but it's because I had been working on the game forever. And it took watching people like, you know, Sagasi and Rilku and all these people that are on the Discord now, it took watching them play and kind of like struggle. And I don't mean this in a bad way, obviously, but like struggle with it to where I was just like, okay, maybe I could balance this a little more, right? So as a matter of fact, at the GDC, again, I lost the train of thought with my buddy Legolomaniac, but that was kind of my point, was that at that same GDC was one of the GDCs where one of my friends who's a really good game developer, he actually works at Galvanic Games. His name's CJ. He worked on Gurgamoth, Some Distant Memory, a couple of games there, and those are available on Switch as well, and on Steam as well. So anyway, CJ did the event system for the game. Like he had an event system that he used for his game, and then he's like, hey man, you might want to try and do this. And because of that system, that's what allowed me to make the game restart and start a lot faster. But anyway, my point with CJ was that he pointed out the idea of how people, because I guess like I was paying attention to what people were doing, but I could not pinpoint exactly where there should be like a breaking point, right? Of where to get the player to be, where to find that breaking point of the player, like where they're going to be like, oh fuck this, I'm done, and they just stop playing. But he pointed out the idea of having the player have the choice to create the difficulty, or the way I termed it was the chaos, because when you can do that, then it shows that you're in that position of wanting that, you know, ability to earn a bunch of points and things like that. So that's when I started experimenting with how to balance that, and the best way to do that was that's how the shields came about, in the sense of the icon and when you can upgrade them. So I started to realize that it's best to have your shields once your weapon system on the left side's fully powered up, so that you can deal with the chaos that you create on the left-hand side. So Sagasi says, just recheck the video. It was 4.4 billion when I extracted. Yeah, dude, and so that's the thing. If I'm not mistaken, you might even be able to catch a glimpse of it on the video, where your original score was like, I don't know, 1.5 million or something, which is a hell of a lot for like, especially for your first couple tries. But for you to get that 4.4 billion nonetheless, yeah, that's definitely something super exciting. And again, so the thing is, right, you get that 4.4 billion. Originally, if you would have played the game again, you would have jumped right back in, and you would have died, and you would have wiped. Your position would have been gone. The leaderboard position would have been gone right then and there. But I changed that to where now it only happens when you are in Sliver Bullet, which, if I'm not mistaken, that happened to you as well, where you found out that you could not pause the game at that time. So that's, again, this goes back to the idea of how people were trying to cheese the low health. I don't make it explicit, but you know, there are some people that will try to like pause the game or whatever, and they start to realize that you can't pause the game when you're in that low health. Nope, you can't pause. Sagasi says you can pause without with a question marks. Yep. You cannot pause. I also kind of just thought that's pretty cool, because it just lends itself to the fuckery, basically. Yeah. Oh no, you can't pause. Yeah, no. So she was asking, you can pause? No, you can't pause. Not in Sliver Bullet. You can pause in the other two, which are critical and low health, but you cannot pause in Sliver Bullet. Yeah, see, so that's kind of my point. Is you're one of the people that, like, I mean, like, I would be the same way. Like, I wouldn't pause. Like, why? Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay, like, you didn't know at all that you could pause, but at the same time, like kind of why would you, right? So it's funny you actually say that, because back earlier, like, even this was like still during the early access days, which was like almost immediately after the Kickstarter failed. Basically, what happened was you couldn't pause the game at all, like you're saying right now. Like, you didn't know that you could pause. Back in the day, you couldn't pause the game at all. So basically, if you tried to pause the game, you would self-destruct and you would quit out to the main screen. And that's another way that it would wipe your position as well, because I didn't want people that quit. I didn't want people that would just be like, all right, no, I'm done. I wanted to keep people engaged as much as possible. And while that, like, I thought that was super cool, and to this day, I still think that's super cool, where you just can't pause the game. There's always moments, though, where, like, actually this happened to me while I was working on the game. Like, I would be working on it, and then Kel would say something like, dinner's ready, or hey, your mom's calling, or something, and I couldn't pause the game. I had to pause the game in the editor, in Unity. And I started to think, you know, there are probably people that are going to be streaming the game, or whatever the case, or their cat jumps on the keyboard, where they're going to have to pause the game. So I figured I don't, as cool as that was, I didn't want to be that much of a dick. So I threw in the pause. And by throwing in a pause, I was able to do other things. So I'll go ahead and switch to the game here. I mean, I can do this without having to do anything super complex here. Just because we're talking about the pause menu, so that I can point this out real quick. So let me go ahead and do a fancy cube zoom here real quick. There we go. So this is the game live on my PC. You're getting audio from the game now. Very subtle, because it's just like if I turn the music down, you'll see. Yeah. So that's static there. So basically what happens is when you pause the game now, you get basically the controller layout, right? So Sagasi, this will be new to you, because I've kind of, again, completely new to you, because you didn't know you could pause. I redid this controller map, because it was actually totally wrong. So I used to have the left bumper and left trigger to the wrong button maps here. So the Switch version currently does have the wrong game mapping here. But anyway, I fixed this, and I made it a little more obvious that your weapons and your defenses will relate to the shoulder and trigger buttons. And then also, now if you hit down, this right here is where you can... there's no tutorial in the game, so it's not like you're playing the game and it'll stop and tell you, hey, this does this, or this is what does that, or, you know, this ship is blue because this one's red, like just stuff like that. The game does not do that. The game just throws you in and expects you to, you know, pay attention and figure everything out on your own. So essentially what you can do here is you can use the left and right bumpers, and also the game is only supported on gamepad. So I am kind of working on keyboard and mouse controls for now, but they're not in the game proper. So although you can use up and down like WS, you know, the WASD controls to move that way, and I think, okay, yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. There are some limited controls because they were left over from while I was working on the game throughout the years. The game will not let you use a keyboard to control the whole game. As a matter of fact, you can't even get past the first screen if your controller's not plugged in. So just so you know, there's a big disclaimer on the page, the Steam page anyway. So yeah, so here's where you basically use left and right to choose whatever tutorial you want to watch. Then you just hit Y, the top face button, and it'll start playing the
trackers are the first enemy you'll encounter on the left. They look harmless at first, but once they overwhelm
so it's
you,
me basically just talking over video of the game and letting you know what all the details are. So you can go to the extraction.
Your one
this
and
tells
only
you what
purpose
extraction
is to keep your score.
Then you can go down. You can change the music, which you're not going to notice here because the music's not going in the pause menu. Then you can just restart, or you can abandon the level entirely. So you can unpause, and it just goes back. So yeah, let me go ahead and swap back over to the gameplay. Just so it's still going in the background. So yeah, Sagasi, sorry I missed your message here. It says, the fact that it's an instant kill is kind of unforgiving though. Maybe if there was like a message that popped up that said there's no pausing life. Yeah, so that would be totally fitting, right? That would be totally fitting with the game. So while, yeah, definitely I could do something like that, the question would be where on screen would I put it? And the most important question is would you even pay attention to that to begin with, right? Because there's already so much going on or whatever. Yeah, so although that is pretty cool, I do like the idea of just kind of some kind of warning, right? Because the videos that I mentioned that do explain the game to people, it does actually, it will tell you that you wiped that way. Oh, it will tell you that you wiped, or that if you wipe during that spot or whatever, that's what happens. But yeah, obviously if you're just kind of playing the game without watching those videos, then yeah, I can kind of see that. Still finding new things on the screen a year later. So, okay, so one thing for sure, and so it's funny you say that, dude, because so one of the main things was that when I was working on the game earlier, like early on anyway, I used to have your health bar. So it wasn't always this like cutesy little pixel heart in the center of the screen. I don't know how that actually just popped into my head where I did that, and I was like, oh, that's cool, and now it's just become a thing of the game, which is pretty rad. The game used to have a health bar on the right ship, so it used to be on the ship itself, so it was kind of like a little like rectangular, you know, like a gauge on your ship, and it wasn't anything fancy, it was just lines. Because again, as not a game developer by trade whatsoever, I had to kind of like make a bunch of different concessions. Like, for example, the health bars on the left, on the trackers, like that. Like, they're just rectangles. There's nothing super fancy about them as much as I wanted to. Do something like that. That kind of stuff is still really hard. Fuck yeah, dude. Okay, so she says it's called style. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Anyway, that was kind of the thing, is the health bar was on the right ship, like directly on the ship. And people would ask me while they were playing the game, they're like, where's my health bar? And I'm like, dude, it's right there. So yeah, it just kind of, I essentially, a lot of the decisions just ended up being like, no one's going to pay attention to this anyway, so no matter where I put it, someone's going to have an issue, and you can't please everybody, so just do the best that you possibly can. And that's like my advice to anybody who's trying to make a video game, is just do the best you possibly can with that, because like, to the best of your ability, right? Like, if you're playing a game, you're going to be looking for stuff in the UI. You're going to be like you know, your health. Essentially what it comes down to is once you know where it is, you know where it is. There's no need for you to like playing Call of Duty, right? Like, once you know where your ammo is, you don't need to be told where your ammo is every like couple seconds, like a Nintendo game or something, where they just repeat tutorials over and over again. Like, there's no need for that. And again, that's not something they taught me at quote-unquote game design school. That's just something you learn from just playing games. Once you know your UI, you know your UI. It does become a little tricky in a game like this, primarily because, you know, you are doing two things at once, and your attention is always being shifted somewhere or another. One thing I tried to tell someone once was that they were saying, you know, oh, I only play something like Smite, or I play StarCraft or something. And it's like, dude, in those games, you are multitasking like a motherfucker. So you're always paying attention to, granted, your level of engagement with all the little things that you're doing is probably a little more intense. And you can kind of leave stuff off and go pay attention to something, which is something I was hoping I kind of tried to nail in here, where while you're doing something, for example, when you're on a resource, you don't take damage. That also came from watching people play, so that you can look over to the left and make sure you're shooting something. Not too many people get that right away, but once they do start to use it to their advantage and stuff like that. So it's all about just, you know, engaging people in this stuff and making sure it's all going. Let's see. I was trying to think of the health. Why did I bring up health? Oh, right, yeah, because you asked about you said about the where to put, or the pausing the game or whatever. Oh, that you're noticing things also a year later. So one thing for sure, replay that. There are some nice reminders though, like always having the extraction ready on screen. Yep, 100%. Simple things like that can get lost in the chaos. Yeah, 100%. And you know, like, also, if I call too much attention to it, again, it just kind of gets thrown into the chaos. So, for example, right now you can see where the extract ready is in the center of the screen. The two buttons that you need to press are highlighting. Where originally, I used to have extract ready with like two, again, it was always just bars and lines, but a lot of those kind of animations that were just kind of trying to get your attention towards the center. But again, this goes back to that whole idea of why are you trying to get their attention, and for how long are you trying to get their attention, right? So once your extract is ready and you see that it's there, it doesn't need to grab your attention anymore. You just need to know that it's there, and then you can look at it. When something is constantly flashing and like leading you into a point of view, then it's always going to be distracting, especially if it's something you don't have to be looking at. Again, that's something that wasn't taught to me. I just kind of watched people play and got feedback from friends who are game developers who did the similar things in their games or whatever. As a matter of fact, one of the things was like in Call of Duty, I think one of the developers in one of their like interviews or whatever was talking about, I think it was like a domination or something, where there's a, my headphone got caught there. In Call of Duty, when you're playing domination, like the center of the screen has the three different flags, right, that you have to go to. And when the game starts, those flags actually animate to where they should be on the screen. And even if they're off screen, they still just go to where they're supposed to. And that is supposed to get your attention immediately so that you know, okay, here's C, here's A, here's B, whatever. And then you know which one's closer and all that kind of crap. And I found this out after the fact, which was kind of cool when I started to think about how you do try to grab the attention of someone by pulling their attention somehow with animations and things like that. So it's just the idea of like animating something enough to get someone's attention, but then how long do you keep it on screen to where it just starts to blend in with everything else, right? So Sagasi says simple things like that. Oh yeah, can get lost. The game is chaotic enough. The screen has to. Yeah, exactly. And you know, believe it or not, like this whole thing is still a little more chaotic than I wish it was. But you know, I try to limit as much as I could and push it out to the outer areas of the game as much as possible. Because a lot of the UI, as a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and bring this up because I did want to show this. Actually, if you guys will bear with me, I'll go ahead and add in a video that I want to show here. And this video, it should be on my YouTube as well. So if you want to go watch this, all of these videos are on my YouTube. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull it in here. And I'll show you guys basically And this is pretty neat if I can pull this in while the stream is still going. That's a neat thing about this software. So yeah, let me copy it over just so I don't risk any network latency here. Give me a quick second, folks. Okay, yeah, here we go. So it's TLDR. Actually, I'll pull both of these in, but yeah. Let's do that one, that one. So I'm going to show you guys a trailer, which is again, it's on the YouTube. It's called TLDR, which again, as most of you probably know, it stands for Too Long Didn't Read. The idea is it's one of the longer form trailers that I did for the game quite a while back, and the purpose of it was to show like the progress of the game, but this is one of the trailers that I'm actually really glad I did because this trailer, or these two trailers actually, show like older footage. As a matter of fact, I'll pull up the PlayStation announcement trailer, which was in 2016, and you could totally see, I think some of the artwork from that might be in this though, but I'll go ahead and bring it up in a bit. Let's see here. Sorry, folks. Just give me a sec. All right, so I'm transferring those files over. And let me see if I have the old PlayStation trailer here. I want to avoid streaming the videos off of YouTube because just for the sake of the stream, I want to avoid any kind of bandwidth issues. My upload speed's pretty good, but you never know. You never know. Okay, here we go. Yeah, and I have so much video of just events of just watching people play the game, and I'll show this the Arcade is Not Dead trailer because that's the one I'm most proud of, just because it was right at the time of like getting this whole thing where I wanted it to be. Yeah, it was rad. So let's see, 2016. Oh wait, those are the projects. The projects, y'all. Oh shit, okay, I actually do have it. So give me a second, I'll copy that over. I thought I was gonna have to re-download, but I do have the actual source file for it, so that's good to know. Yeah, I'll use this one. 720p, y'all. 720p. And let me go back here. Okay, so I'm going to load this one in first. Then I'll load another one. All right, yeah. So what I will go ahead and do, I'll play the PlayStation trailer first, just because that one, just in terms of straight time. Did I pull that one in? No. Okay. That one came first, but the arcade is the TLDR one came a little after that one, and I love showing these just because it's just cool to see how far the game has come from way back in the day like that. So let me just resize these real quick, and we'll be good to go. Luckily, I memorized the sizing that I did for this little section here. Shouldn't take too long. Okay, there's that one. And I've never done this live on stream, so we'll see how this works. This is actually a really good test because I've kind of always wanted to do this kind of stuff. So back in the day, this is kind of like getting all super deep cut style, but back in the day, when I was all into like following game journalism news and all that kind of crap, when OneUp.com was still around and stuff, I would watch things, you know, like the OneUp show or whatever, and I would always see like, because back in the day, it was really rare to back in the day. This is a couple years ago. It was rare to see video game outlets do breakdowns of trailers where like they would actually like when they released like the Halo trailer or whatever, the Halo 3 trailer, they would like pull it up and just like super overanalyze everything and like, slow down the video and frame by frame be like, oh, this is where Master Chief talks to Cortana and like that's got to be Cortana, blah 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 or whatever, like stupid shit like that, which is awesome. Yeah, so let me go use this keyboard just to make sure. All right, so I should be able to. Yeah, let me bring the music down and then there should be audio to these. So let's go ahead and do the PlayStation trailer real quick. So yeah, this is when I announced the PlayStation version at during GDC of 2016. So my thought process at that point, I had shown the game at PAX South 2016, which was my first like straight up on my own kind of like event that I showed the game at. Then when I showed the game at GDC, it was the following year, but this was the year I announced it at GDC 2016, and this was the trailer I made for it. Let's see if there's audio for this. There should be. Yeah, cool.
The DFR Reclaimer was sent on a mission to the volatile planet of Zastris.
So if you'll notice, this video is actually very similar to the prologue video that I threw into the game proper. Give me a sec, actually, while this plays. I'm going to turn on my stream lights real quick, just because I can start to see the outline fake out here. Give me a sec. All right, so here we go. This is what I was talking about. Let me go ahead and just pause this here. So if you notice, the health bar on the right side, and let's see. Yeah, I can totally rewind. This is awesome. So I just need to connect my my little shuttle express so I can kind of do this without having to use a mouse because this is kind of inconvenient. But yeah, so this is basically what the game used to look like in 2016. So obviously the layout's a little different. When you would take hits, it wasn't as obvious as it is now, where like now when you take a hit from something, it's kind of like pretty obvious you took damage. And notice there's no animation to the left side. Those right there, the trackers on the left, they're obviously so small, right? The trackers on the left aren't even animated. There's nothing to them. They're just sprites. So all of this original artwork was from the original Game Maker version. Yeah. So yeah, I actually kind of like this font, but yeah, fall 2016, PS4, PS Vita. Yeah, right. So anyway, yeah, that's that trailer. This is the TLDR trailer I was talking about. So let's go ahead and start this one here. And in this trailer, like I said, it's meant to show the progress of the game. So I start off with, right, Sagasi? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is kind of a trailer meant to explain like my whole kind of process with the game. So this is the game in Game Maker. And if you notice, the artwork's still the same. The idea is still the same. The very, very basic idea of, pause that there real quick. Yeah, the obvious idea of, you know, you're still shooting things on the left. On the right side, you're obviously trying to avoid these little asteroids. And as you'll notice, the more I don't know what these were, canisters, I guess, that I drew. The more that you destroy on the left side, the more the asteroids will, or these little asteroids start to pop up. So you get more, you get two. And the whole process here was, if you'll notice right here, I have a level on the ship. So you would basically get through a certain amount of levels, and it would just get more and more chaotic. And I've actually kind of considered still releasing this Game Maker version of the game as like a Dual Hand Disaster classic or something. Because it was also just kind of meant to be a very, how would you say, like I said earlier, just a very bite-sized game that was meant to be picked up really quick and just kind of mess around with or whatever. So yeah, yeah, that's basically the idea. You leveled up, and when you stopped, your score would be marked on the leaderboard. And if you wiped, then you would start all the way back over from, I think it was 0 at that time, level 0. Because I had some kind of thing with like day 0 or whatever. That was a really dumb, taking myself too seriously kind of thing. So yeah, that's a game in Game Maker. And then in 2014, feels a lot more casual compared to constantly stress. Yeah, right. So, yeah, basically 2014 was all spent learning Unity.
If you want, you can also
So at one of the panels I did at PAX, I think it was PAX East, I showed this trailer and kind of did the same thing that I'm doing now, is just break it down so you get to see the artwork, because I wanted people to see. There are a lot of people that kind of want to get into game design, and they freak out too much about like, oh, my art sucks or this and that or whatever. And I kind of want to show that, like, you know, this game looked like whole when I first started it too. It's just the idea of like, what are you happy with, right? And I mentioned this earlier, where there's a lot of aspects of this older version that I still really like. So, for example, the score up top, I really, really like that transparent, huge ass score. But at that time, and this is actually something I might still be able to go back to. At the time, I didn't know how to constrain the text, so this score, if it went higher than, I think it was a total of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like 9 numbers, it would just go off the screen. So I didn't know how to make this score shrink based on how big your score was, right? So it's really funny, because the bigger your score would be, the smaller it would be, which is just kind of dumb. But yeah, I just really like that simplistic look of the score here. The other thing was, give me a sec, let me take a drink of my soda here. I wasn't able to make coffee in time, so second best thing is I guess a Coke. So, yeah, let's see. What else could I point out here? Well, that's definitely one thing I really liked, was this big-ass translucent score. You would think it would get in the way, but it actually doesn't. It just kind of, when you're playing the game, it just kind of like blends into the scenery like almost everything else probably does. But yeah, so then also down here in the bottom, you'll notice there's a leveling system to the weapons. So again, this goes back to that idea of how I was talking about before, where I used to have so many more mechanics that are in there right now that it's kind of like it was super interesting from a gameplay perspective of you would get your upgrades. For example, the upgrades that you get right now, you would pick those up, and then you could choose which weapon you wanted to level up. So it would start you off with all the enemies immediately. So if I play a little more... Okay, so I was showing this, and this is another thing. I showed this game at E3, which still blows my mind. This version of the fucking game, too. So, bring this back a little here, just so he's out of the way. There you go. Okay, so on the left-hand side, it would start you off with all the enemies. So you would have your trackers, you would have your guards, and you would have the voids in the back. I was trying to get a screen here where you could actually see. Yeah, that doesn't work. A screen where you could see the voids also, but you get the idea. All 3 enemies were available immediately. So then it was up to you, and your upgrades would just fall automatically. They had no connection to the right side. So this is another one of those things where I just decided to make one side affect the other more than it would originally, because originally I always get those people that say, why didn't you just make one game or the other? Why'd you make both at the same time? The reason being was because of a game that I've talked about a million times, Brothers, where you're doing 2 things at once, and it feels really good when one side is doing something that affects the other side, especially when you're doing it in real time. Like, it's not necessarily just like this brother presses a button, and then you completely let go of that side, and you look at this side, and he's like, okay, this guy needs to go through a gate now or something, right? Brothers was a lot more complex than that. So, like, you would have to do the whole kind of belly rub and rub your head kind of thing or whatever, where you had to turn like a gate wheel or whatever to make a gate go up for the brother on the left, but you still had to be doing that while pushing the brother into the entrance or whatever. So that kind of stuff was always cool, so I wanted to kind of throw that in here as well. And yeah, so basically the upgrades on the left side, they would just spawn in. They would random, like no connection to the right side whatsoever. Fireballs, same thing. Fireballs just randomly spawned. Parts would spawn automatically. Material would also spawn automatically. And when you would get your upgrades, you would get them, I don't remember. Yeah, okay, so there it is. On the left, the bottom left corner, you see a little button prompt that's like a D-pad. So essentially your weapons were assigned, your upgrade was assigned to a direction. So if you wanted to upgrade your repeater, it was left on the D-pad. Scattershot was up. Right side was your missiles. And then if you notice, it goes by real quick. If you blink, you'll miss it. But there's also these red little canisters with a 0 right next to them, right above the, what you see, it used to be called fuel, because that's essentially what that is. There's a little red, like, canister-looking thing, and I called that the bro, which was a big red object, which kind of was like a really dumb reference to just games being stupid, where, like, red barrels, every time you shoot them, they explode. So basically you would craft, it was kind of like a crafting system, you would craft red barrels that you would push out by pressing down, and it would just shoot it out into the level. You would shoot it with a missile, and it would just nuke out the screen. Essentially what the power cells do now. So yeah, there was that there. The weapons were always the same, though. It was always repeaters, scattershot, and missiles. Your fuel was just called fuel instead of a link. Again, because I wanted to make the link between both ships. And again, all that stuff just came out naturally. It wasn't like I didn't pre-plan for any of this to happen. That's just what happened. On the right-hand side, you'll notice, yeah, so exit available. Yeah, before it was called an exit. I called it extract after a while because extract takes... Again, it's kind of like overthinking things and taking yourself a little too serious and trying to add a little more depth than what's really there. But the idea of extraction came from the idea of the player needing to do something to leave, as opposed to, like, an exit is an exit. It's a thing that exists that you just walk through. Where extraction, the player needs to, or when you extract something, it requires action from the person doing it. as opposed to just an exit. So I thought extraction was pretty cool, and it fit the mode of the whole game, the theme of the whole game. And then you've got your material on the right side and your parts on the left there, right next to me right here. That's 6. And then you've got the 0 over on that side. Same thing on the right side. So you would get your parts, and then you would kind of upgrade whatever defense you wanted to have, right? So it was still the same thing. It was so here's the other thing, though, about the slowdown time. So Sagasi says, sorry, dude. Funny story, actually. I was exposed to this game a year before I actually played it from when Hummus broke the score. Oh, awesome. So were you like a friend of Hummus's, or did you watch his streams and then that's how you knew about the game? That's awesome. I don't think I ever knew that, dude. Unless you told me and I totally forgot, which is totally possible. That's awesome. Hummus has sent a lot of people, I'll say our way, quite a couple times, and that dude's legit as hell, so I appreciate that. Sagasi says, no, I watched the Catane stuff. Oh, yeah, keep talking, nobody explodes. And saw his video on this. Awesome, dude. That's rad. So that's totally random then. So if you had no idea what this game was, you still came across it somehow just by randomly watching some video. So that's super rad. Didn't even make the connection until his name came up, and I was like, wait, that sounds familiar. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, Hummus is super rad dude, man, and he's been there from the beginning, from the days of early access. He played it, if I'm not mistaken, it was probably at PAX East 2016 was the first time I met him, because he had already been playing it before Blaze, and I met Blaze at 2017. So interesting there. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, keep talking. Nobody Explodes is a great, fantastic game. If anyone's out there hasn't played it yet, it's available in VR and non-VR. It's just a game where you have to print out a bomb manual, and you play with a bunch of people. One person is either on a VR headset or staring at a computer screen. It's best played with a laptop, I guess, because you can have a laptop and then you're the only one who can see the screen, and you guys kind of don't cheat or whatever. But yeah, you have a bomb manual, and you're kind of yelling out like, what color is this wire or whatever. It's super rad. I totally recommend people check it out. Excuse me, check it out. Yeah, so anyway, leveling system. Yeah, and then again, when you're on a resource, you start to see that bar there. Shows you that. It was always a top-down on the right side, so it wasn't until, when was it, where I started to, or actually, no, let me see.
If you want, you can also leave just to get an idea of what that score is, so you know, you lost it.
Huh. I don't remember. Oh, yeah, so that's true. Okay, so this was E3 in 2015, so it wasn't until Indiecade in 2015 where I implemented the camera angle. So I think this next one, so yeah, 2016, let's see what happens here. Yeah, non-stop rock and roll. So this just basically goes into, so this dude, obviously, from back in the 1UP days, super respect this dude. Yeah, and I got to show him the game a year before. So interesting part about Garnett, he saw me, because I showed him the game at the PAX before this year, which was 2015. This was the PAX that I first showed the game at. I won't say he was dismissive, but he was very kind of like, he was encouraging in a way, but it was kind of like he saw a very, very early version of the game. Again, 2015, super, super early. And, you know, I told him that it was just me, that I had just dropped out of school, blah, blah, blah. And so he just kind of like, he said, cool concept, you know, good luck, man. Like, you know, and again, it wasn't dismissive, but it was just kind of like, I'm going to show you I can do this, man, because I totally respected this dude, because this dude's really, really good about just playing games and understanding them almost immediately, and just, yeah, it's super rad, dude. So, like, yeah, I was hell-bent on making sure that I made a game that this dude could appreciate. And the funny thing is, it wasn't long after this, where he just made a random Twitter call and was like, hey, we're looking for games for the Twitch stream. I ended up with a spot on there by just asking. So this is one of those reasons why I always say, ask a question, ask what you can, because you never know what'll come of it. But if you don't ask, you definitely know the answer is no. Super cheesy as hell, I know, but, you know, you got to do it. Yeah, so anyway, showing this game at Twitch, at PAX East. So
about a year ago here
this will
as well,
show...
where you showed me a prototype of this game, and man,
yeah, so by this point, I had already thrown in that camera angle. This is PAX East now. Oh, no, this is still PAX South. So I had two opportunities there, which is super rad. This is actually when I met my buddy Scott, who is was a totally random person that just showed up and played the game. I could get into that story at another time, but yeah, so my buddy Scott showed up. So this is me showing the game at GDC, and it was all because of Garnett. So he was working at Amazon at the time, and they were looking for games for the Fire TV. So here you can see, here you can see where the camera angle started to come in of having, you know, that kind of like isometric almost look to the right side. It's not quite the tilt, but it is that tilt on the y-axis at least. And then the left side started to get a little more more clean, more visually thematic with the rest of the game. And you can see obviously more changes in the UI. So I got rid of all those upgrade systems that were there that were way too complicated for people to understand. And I basically just, you know, try to find somewhere else to put that. You could see this is where I started to experiment with like the quote-unquote tutorializing of the game, where I started to put the hold left trigger thing on the left guys, the trackers basically, to let people know what button to press and stuff. The UI, you could see this is kind of more the PlayStation idea. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, this is the PlayStation build. Yeah, it is, because they're holding the PlayStation controllers, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so the health bar, little heart, obviously to signify, you know, your health or whatever. And then when you activate shields, it actually shoots over to the right and then turns into this kind of blue heart, whatever. I might be getting into too much into the weeds there, but I love explaining this stuff because it still blows my mind how much this thing has changed. Notice the link, quote unquote, is two hands together. So that's where I started to get the idea of making it a heart. Funny part is, I actually got this from playing Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain, because there's a very subtle animation in Phantom Pain where I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's two hands holding each other, but when they're on top of each other like that, it looks like a heart. And I thought it was really cool, so I tried to do that, but it's also kind of like you're just holding hands, obviously. And I wanted to signify, again, the connection between both ships. So that's a random deep cut there. Yeah, parts and material up on the top. You could see there's kind of like I started to experiment with like at this time, Unity didn't have like a built-in UI system where how it does now, where you can actually just kind of you have a separate UI from the cameras that are rendering the game itself. So the camera on the right side, I started to experiment with. Now that I had this camera angle, I started to have a, what is it? It's a perspective camera, where before it was an orthographic camera, which is just the ones that show just a flat image. That it makes it. That's what 2D games use. So orthographic cameras will just flatten the image, and there's no depth whatsoever. So once I started using 3D cameras, I started to mess around with putting UI elements on the camera itself that were kind of like angled, so it gave it like a bit of depth. Again, little things that were really cool, but it just looks gross, like in retrospect, right? Yeah. So what else can I point out here? I guess that's it. I moved. I had a name for the ships, just so people could know, oh, this is the assault side, this is the recovery side. No one paid attention to that, and no one ever really cared or paid attention. One of the things that I got good feedback from was this guy Sam, who works on a game called Just Shapes and Beats. The name of the studio is not hitting me right now. Berserk Studio. So they worked on a game called Just Shapes and Beats, and at a party at PAX West, Indie Mega Booth party, if I'm not mistaken, I was invited to, but it was at the Indie. What is it called? The Seattle Indies, like, there's a name for it, and I'm totally blanking on it right now. But anyways, I got to meet them there. But the thing was, I was still working on the game, like, over in a little section instead of being at the party talking to people because I just wanted to get the game done. And one of the developers from that studio came over and was testing out the game. He's like, dude, this is really cool, blah, blah, blah. But he was giving me, like, and I appreciate this, like, just straight hard, like, feedback. Because he's like, dude, can I tell you stuff? And you won't get mad. And I'm like, dude, just go for it, man, because I need this stuff. So he was telling me, he's like, you know, all that stuff is kind of pointless. No one's reading that. And he pointed out a lot of things that I knew I should have been doing, but I just kind of refused to do them because I was like, no, that needs to be there. And it was totally obvious. Like, there's no need for those two things up there. There's other ways to introduce the names of the ships, which I obviously eventually did. Let's see here.
Like we were talking about, I think
that's pretty much
it
it
I know
here.
you were kind of thinking
But you could see I started experimenting with the particle effects, especially on the fireballs. The arrows on your ship that tell you where material and parts are, they were just little dots, but they were always different in size because I wanted to show you the priority of what's more important. And that's kind of where I got a comment at the GDC event that I showed this at, where I got people who were like about being colorblind and stuff, and they were like, oh, you know, I can't tell the difference in color, but I can tell the difference in size. So that was kind of neat. This wager system, I eventually ended up taking out because the wager system didn't. I wasn't able to do exactly what I wish I could have done with the wager system, which I could always use for a later game or a later idea that I kind of have brewing in my head right now. But again, another change in the UI. So let's go ahead and pause this real quick here. Yeah, another change in the UI. So I thought, okay, well, if that other UI was a little too messy, what if I start messing around with what do you call it? Like like an in-world kind of like UI, right? So I started to throw in. Sagasi says, well, didn't that just change into the investment bit? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so the wager system originally was meant for you to wager. So this was the original idea, and I just couldn't pull it off. But the wager system was originally meant, again, I always wanted you to have some kind of risk with your leaderboard position itself. So it was meant for you to kind of like gamble some of the score that you had already put up on the leaderboard towards your next position. So you could do 25, 50, or 100%. And if you went into the next tier and you didn't reach that score, whatever amount you died with or whatever would be taken from the score that you had on the leaderboard. So it wasn't that your position was wiped necessarily, but it would take a chunk of it. I couldn't figure out how to do that, so I just left it out. I ended up just taking it out and made it more of a wager system in the game where it's more of a obviously the whole capital investment thing makes sense, but it is the idea of like now you have this capital that you've built up, you're going to invest it in your second run, and then once you reach that investment, it again becomes capital. Yeah, exactly. All or nothing. Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of the point is it was the percentage kind of wasn't, there was no risk there. People would always actually just do all or nothing. It was 100%. No one ever did 25. No one did 50. So I just took it out entirely. It was a cool idea with poor execution, I guess you could say.
All right. An El Paso native is
this was just when I was interviewed for a local TV station.
The game is called Dual Hand Disaster Track.
But if you just want to...
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. And then TLD. Okay, so the whole purpose of the game is to show it from GameMaker to transition to Unity. And then at that time, this particular version that's coming up here was the like the up-to-date version to that day to show hey, look, this is how far the game has come. And you will start to notice, again, more UI changes, right? But also a cleaner look to the right side in the sense of just like the camera, the level layout, and all that kind of stuff. All my fire towers were still at that point spawning in different areas. So the fire towers were never set. They were just kind of popping up here and there and here and there. And the reason I did away with that is there were times where there was a huge section of, say, like the right corner that would get all the fire towers, and then on the right, like the whole other section of the map was free and clear, outside of like some fireballs coming towards you, right? Was pretty much free and clear, so you could get all these resources and not even have to worry about the fire towers. So I ended up completely scrapping that because, again, that was just there because of early coding things and figuring out how to randomize stuff. But one thing was I did like this UI for the left ship, but I got plenty of feedback from people just saying it was very distracting where they thought they were where the UI was, if that makes sense. So they would think they were that kind of like red marker instead of thinking they were this circle. My thought process was the circle was big enough to get your attention and know that's where you were, and having the UI on the ship while it was cool was definitely distracting, and it was just very messy. Right-hand side, same thing. You had all of this stuff on your ship, and it's kind of like you would lose focus on where your ship was. I think this is when I started to add animation. Yeah, to the left trackers. Notice they don't have shields, though, so this is kind of where Blaze comes into the whole story. Sagasi, just so you know this. Blaze and this guy Tyler, sorry. Were playing the game at PAX East when I first met them, and they were cheesing that. So they would level up their repeater all the way, which meant they were able to just kind of swipe left and right and kill enemies without having to worry about all the other guys that would come in later. So I ended up adding shields to the game because of those dudes. And then I'll just go ahead and let this one play in the background because this one's cool. Put the volume on. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is where I started to get more into the people that were playing the game and how they reacted to basically dying. Because by this point, the game mechanics were hell. And this is the mega booth at PAX West in 2018. Yeah, so by this point, the gameplay itself, you could obviously tell, is hella more tight, hella more focused. And this was about the time I was at, yeah, this was actually right after early access release. So this was kind of like the version that was there. Notice again, let's go back here real quick, just because again, this one shows a older UI as well. So yeah, Sagasi, you are obviously familiar with Tier 3, but so yeah, here we go. This UI I thought was really neat. You've got your link on the top left side, your extraction on top right side. I obviously ended up making those into the center because there was no real... So as you get parts, you would fill up your extraction. And then the thing was when your extraction was filled up, it is kind of like how you're doing it now, but it was a little more of like a gauge in a way. And I don't know, something about that just kind of didn't make sense. It wasn't very clear to people that were playing it what was going on anyway. Not like it necessarily is now either, but the thing I was trying to go for wasn't what I was accomplishing, so I scrapped that whole idea. Firewall is obviously there. Hold to extract, you notice that whole animation thing is there in the center. Your bonus for your firewall and all your other bonuses was right there in the center. Bottom of the screen, kind of where I'm at here with the couch, was the in-game leaderboards that are now in the game. That's what I was going to say, Sagasi. That's definitely something new that you may have noticed in the old gameplay there, or the gameplay I was streaming earlier. That kind of diamond in the center was your... I actually never ended up implementing that. That was a whole other thing. I honestly, at the moment, don't remember what I was trying to do there. But then your multiplier kind of pops up somewhere. I can't remember exactly where. Also, throughout this whole time, if I'm not mistaken, even up until this build, the time directive was automatically activated. So when you would get your 12th part, if you notice that blue ring around your ship, which currently now is the kite bonus, that used to be the time directive. So as it was always active within that circle. So if anything came in that circle, it would slow down time automatically. You didn't have to activate it. You didn't have to do any of that. It was cool because it would actually give the player kind of like, say for example, you're playing the game and you're about to get hit. The thought process there was that if you're about to get hit and I slow down time, it'll give you, you'll notice that if you're paying attention to the left-hand side, you'll notice that it's starting to slow down. So what would happen there is basically you would look over to the right because you're like, okay, time's slowing down. Something's going to hit me. So you would look over and just kind of like move out of the way or whatever. It was cool, but it was causing a lot more like sluggishness of the gameplay that I just wasn't happy with. And I ended up just completely taking it out. So yeah, that was kind of the thought process there. Also, yeah, the UI, the buttons, the circles on the left side were basically what the diamonds are now at the bottom of the screen. Obviously, that's when I had the Discord. I don't think there's anything else here. Oh wait, yeah, there's a little bit of a stinger here. So this was fucking rad. This was at Sam Arcade. This dude who's playing it just totally white, but notice the guy in the left right here. He's stone cold. Yeah. Dude didn't give a fuck, man. He was just like, what's going on here? It was awesome. So yeah, that's the Arcade is Not Dead trailer. Let's go ahead and transition back to the gameplay. There we go. Yep. So yeah, I guess, I mean, I think that'll pretty much do it for tonight. I will be back on Saturday. Going to stream again on Saturday. So again, the whole purpose of this stream is to promote the Indie Mega Booth sale, which is happening right now on Steam. Let me see if I can actually bring that page up because it's pretty rad. Oh, the Indies Workshop. So that's actually just because I was typing Indie Mega Booth into my browser here. The Indies Workshop is where I was talking about that I was hanging out at a party and just did that. Was working on the game. Pretty dumb. Yeah, there's a really cool blog post about the sale. So let me actually, I think I can, yeah, I can change this over. There we go. So yeah, the Indie Mega Booth sale is, Kelly says here, with so many games on sale, we're carefully curated each into different sections to match your mood. Tired of all the stress and uncertainty building up around you? Check out our calming distractions. Feel like picking up a sword and getting lost in magical world? Time to pursue epic undertakings. A glutton for punishment? The deliciously difficult category awaits you. Looking to be the one in your friend group that unearths that strange, surreal hit? You could do the new cult classics. So they basically broke down all the Indie Mega Booth games into all these different sections. So for calming distractions, you've got like Burly Men at Sea. I think this is Mini Metro here. Yeah, there's all these games here. All these games are on sale. The new cult classics. You got like your, what is this, Fuck Finger? Oh, Freedom Finger, that's right. Yeah, Freedom Finger. Always Sometimes Monsters. I wonder if, oh, my boys, Norman's Night In. This game's pretty cool. Yeah, replaying history, I guess, time traveling, that's pretty neat. Serenity Forge, those guys are really rad. Yeah, I honestly thought I would be in this category, but deliciously difficult is a pretty good one to be in too. So yeah, this is actually an old screenshot, but hey man, I'm happy to be up there, right up there with my boys. Mo, with Vertex Pop. Yeah, what game are they promoting? Is it yeah, We Are Doomed. That's this game here in the center. So yeah, check out the Steam Indie Mega Booth sale. And I got the stream there. Let me actually turn away for a sec. And let's see if it pops up. Yeah, so it should be live already. You should be able to find like the Indie Mega Booth banner, but it's going to be more fully featured over the weekend, so that's kind of why another reason why I wanted to do a Saturday stream. And yeah, I'll have a couple more people on to just share some stories and shoot the shit. Let me see what happens if you die. Type Indie Mega Booth. Okay. Might be a curator thing. There it is. Mega Booth. Oh yeah, I forgot this is the studio account, not my personal account. Yeah, so all these games are on sale right now. Or they are going to be you can wish list them or whatever the case. That's a lot of stuff, man. Perception, that's pretty neat. Man, that list keeps going. So yeah, there is no shortage of stuff for you to play if you're looking for something. I'm just curious while I'm here, why not check something. Also, I am in a bundle with a couple of my friends who've also made games. Oh, nice, that's cool. Oh, crap. Oh, well, yeah, that's my page, so it's right there. Anyway, let's see here. Yeah, so I am in a bundle with a couple of my buds. We called it the Split Screen Mindbenders. So both of these games are kind of like split screen single player type games. So you've got Dimension Drive, which is a split screen game. But in this game, you kind of like shift left and right, so you're controlling one or the other at any given moment. And then you've got Semispheres, which is kind of like my game, but on like what's a calming drug, like an opiate or something, right? And you're kind of controlling these two little like blobby things, solving. It's more of like a puzzle game than it is an action game. But yeah, it's rad as balls. So if you get all three games, you actually get even more of a discount. So let's see. I think it's not counting ADHD because I already own it. But if you get all two of these, it's only $10. So there you go. So yeah, I guess that's going to end it for us today. I will see you guys again on Saturday. Sagasi, thank you so much for stopping by, dude. And take care of yourself, dude. And we'll see each other hopefully on Saturday. I will stream some more then. Y'all be safe.